All right, Novak Djokovic is back again in the winner's circle, taking home his sixth ATP Finals year-end championships. He's on top. He's beaten all the guys. He's swept the ATP Finals. And my question is Djokovic the real number one? I think a lot of people think or know that he is the best player in the world and still would think that even though his rankings not number one, but with how crazy the rankings have been this year and how he's not even been allowed to play two of the majors, and he didn't play four of the Masters, but he's still number 5 at the end of the season. Is he the real number one instead of Carlos Alcaraz? So we're going to take a little bit of a look at his tournament here, how he won it, swept the whole tournament. Is he the real number one, and who can hang with him and challenge him for that spot if he is in 2023? So let's take a look at it. Welcome to the slice, and let's get rolling. So there you have it. Novak Djokovic back with the trophy. It's been a few years actually since he won it, but he put out a dominant performance this year at the ATP Finals. Not super unexpected. I thought he might be challenged a bit more than he was. He did have some challenging matches, and there were some close ones, and we'll get into those. But he, won 5 matches in a row, swept the ATP Finals, and he's looking pretty good. Very, very good end to his season after not being allowed to play at the U.S. Open. Pretty much was, now undisputedly the best player since the U.S. Open. So that's big for him. First of all, BetStamp. Shout out to our sponsors, BetStamp, who is the bettor's friend. If you are someone who bets on sports and you want to get better odds for the bets that you're already making, don't just use one sports book. Use BetStamp to line shop and figure out what the best odds are for the specific bet you're looking at, and then you'll just get more for your risk, which makes total sense. So click the link below, join BetStamp using our code, and that will help you out and help out the show. Also, subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks again for the birthday wishes. I see you. I read them all. And thanks again for getting us over 15,000. So next thing you need to do is subscribe to the Monday Bagel. I just put it out. It's a Monday weekly newsletter where I kind of round up and wrap up all the tennis news and just deliver it straight to you. So you don't have to go to all the different websites to learn about what's going on. It's all just in your news inbox. So that's what we're doing with the Monday Bagel. Thanks for getting around that. So let's take a look at Novak Djokovic's title run here at the ATP Finals. So he started the week in the round robin, obviously. He started playing Tsitsipas, was his first match. And Tsitsipas, I tweeted out before, like I said, is now he's in a bad spot with Djokovic. I think the head-to-head is 10-2. And Djokovic just won 9 in a row now. So it's like approaching pigeon status. Like being somebody's pigeon is where you can just like count on you beating this guy over and over and over. It's like if I went and played basketball against my little 10-year-old nephew and he wanted to play basketball, it's like I know I'm going to get a win. So I'm just going to go play him because I know I'll win every time. That's basically what it's approaching when Djokovic plays Tsitsipas, which is ridiculous because it started out 2-1, and honestly, Tsitsipas has been there at the top of the game for years now, challenging these guys. When he played Djokovic in the French Open final, 2021, it seemed like he was going to win, obviously up 2-0, and it seemed like the levels were right there. But since then, Djokovic has just gotten the better of him every time, and this was another example of that. Fairly close match, but just Djokovic being the mentally stronger guy and having the goods and the more clutch factor. He also had that same thing, I think, when they played in Paris. Same thing, 7-6 in the third set there. They also played in the Astana final. That was a bit more straightforward. So Djokovic has really been laying the beat down on Tsitsipas as of late. Djokovic then beat Rublev 6-4, 6-1, fairly straightforward for him. And then he had that crazy epic versus Medvedev where he expended a lot of energy, and then we thought he might not have it for Fritz, who I thought was the danger match for him in the semifinals. What happened with Taylor Fritz? It was a super close match again, obviously. Apparently, Djokovic really didn't have his best form, which is kind of a theme of this week where he was winning without his best stuff. Wins 7-6, 8-6 in 2 tiebreak sets there against Fritz. There was a kind of crazy controversy where a lady in the crowd yelled out when Fritz was about to kind of put away a fairly easy backhand up the line. And then Fritz ended up getting broken after that. or get broken back to then get into a tiebreaker. But that's just kind of one of those things that really can't determine the outcome of a match. The better players obviously still going to win, and that was Djokovic for sure. And then he beat Ruud which we expected him to, in fairly straightforward. It was closer, than I actually might have thought. Ruud is, super impressive. If you aren't impressed by Ruud now, you're just a hater, straight up hater at this point, because he played great and he's really improved his game on the quicker surfaces. Made 3 big finals. People say, how's he number 3 in the world without winning anything bigger than a 250? It's like, well, if you didn't know, you get a lot of points for being the runner-up to the U.S. Open, the French Open, and the ATP Finals. So, yeah, that's how Ruud's gotten all the way up there without winning any big titles. I'm sure he'll be wanting to do more of that next year, but huge results for him. Also the Miami Open finalist as well. So Djokovic comes through and wins. Again, not totally unexpected to me. He's the best player at that year-end championships for sure. But the big question is he the real number one? So you got Carlos Alcaraz, who is the number one. He's the number one with some of the lowest points if you look at the year-end number one, who and the amount of points that they had over the last 20 years, Carlos is one of the lowest in there. And, that's for a number of reasons. The main one would be points. Like, all the points for Wimbledon weren't injected into the system, so there's just less points to go around. But then also Carlos didn't only won 1 major. He won 2 Masters, I think. So it's not like we've seen years before where Djokovic or Nadal ending with kind of at least 2 majors and then a few Masters as well, for sure. And then a lot of other really good results, which get their point total up. But the big question, the big debate is Djokovic the true number one? Because he wasn't allowed to play Australia, the US Open, and he didn't play 4 Masters, and he still ends up number 5. If the Wimbledon points counted, I think he would have only been 50 or 100 points behind Carlos Alcaraz, and then it would be pretty crazy to look at that. So even though Alcaraz won their only meeting, he still has a lot to prove, in my opinion, going forward as the number one. He doesn't have a lot to prove because he's already been number one at 19, which is just crazy. And I'm sure if he gets knocked off early next year, he'll get back there eventually for sure. Probably not very long after that. But Djokovic, when you still look at it and you just take what everyone thinks, you still feel like he is the baseline for who the man to beat is. He is still like the best player. He's won 21 slams across surfaces. He seems like the best player. We don't want to disrespect Nadal at all, for sure. He had an amazing win in Australia. He had a fairly hard-fought win at Roland Garros, which seems like he's just going to win until the end of his career. But outside of clay, he seems a lot more beatable right now to me than Djokovic does. And Carlos seems like, he's been the hottest player 2022 for sure. Like, he came onto the scene faster and harder than we've ever seen since Novak Djokovic, probably. Or even more than Novak Djokovic, because he went straight to number one. But the rankings have been a bit of a flawed system in 2022, if we're all being honest, with the points that haven't been injected, and Djokovic not being allowed to play at these big events. So my main point is I don't know who's the real number one. I would say, if someone asked me who's the real best player in the world, I would probably say Novak Djokovic. Carlos Alcaraz is the number one player in the world. That will be decided, though, I think, at the Australian Open 2023. So the upcoming Australian Open is really where we're going to know who the real best player in the world is. If Carlos loses early, or he loses to Djokovic, in the quarterfinals, semifinals, final, then it's pretty clear that Djokovic is the best player in the world. And I'm sure he'll be number one, getting all those points back into his total. So we don't want to have to wait very long to see who the real number one is, and you can just argue and speculate it, which I'm sure you'll do in the comment section below. But it's going to be an interesting storyline for me to follow and report on. And my question is, who are the guys that could challenge Djokovic in 2023 to be the number one player in the world? Because it seems like there's a bunch of guys, and it's been like this for a while. There's been a bunch of younger guys who beat him, who can beat him, who have beat him. But now it seems like there's quite a big pool of guys who are right below kind of his level, where if they beat him, it's not surprising, but he still seems to get that edge over them mentally, just with his game. So top of the list for me, Alcaraz. He's going to be that guy. but now who can challenge him for sure. But now he won't be the underdog who comes and plays Djokovic with nothing to lose. Now he's going to be the number one ranked player in the world, trying to hold on to his seat, fending off, arguably the greatest of all time in Novak Djokovic, coming to reclaim that number one spot. So that's going to be a totally different pressure dynamic, which Carlos has talked about in the past as affecting him. So it affects everyone, and Carlos is not immune to that. But Alcaraz is definitely going to be one of the guys who challenges Djokovic for the number one seed next year, and who's going to try and hold on to it at the Australian Open. Tsitsipas, I believe he can challenge him for the number one seeds. Absolutely. He must, though, fix his return. I've watched Tsitsipas up close and personal and chatted with him after matches this year. And it's clear that the one thing that holds him back from being the number one player in the world, winning slams, is probably his return. He just isn't able to consistently be solid on return, and therefore his opponents can get away with not having amazing serves or just not serving super well, and he doesn't always punish them for that. So every other part of his game is great. His backhand, obviously, his slice could use work still, but he seems to be able to hide that enough to then beat players. And it seems like against a guy like Djokovic, who serves incredibly well now, if Tsitsipas could even be like an average or above average returner on the ATP and the WTA as well, he would have a much better chance and much easier time beating Djokovic, and I believe he would, than he does now. So Tsitsipas could get there. He has to change his return or improve his return, and we'll see if he does. We'll see if he does over the off season, and we'll see if he changes his team at all. Medvedev can obviously challenge Djokovic. He's already done that. He's already beat him in the final of a slam. He's already taken the number one overall ranking from him. So he's obviously right there. Felix Auger-Aliassime, I'm putting him right in there. From what we've seen from the kid this year, he believes, and I believe, that he can be the best player in the world. He's shown the game that is the best in the world. He beat Alcaraz quite easily. He's beat him twice since the US Open, and he has the game, and he beat Djokovic to the Laver Cup. I would love to see them play again. So when he's playing at his best and he's playing confident, which confidence comes and goes, but obviously the more you win, the more you play, the more it's there, he can beat anyone on the tour. And I'm excited to see what he does at the Australian Open and basically any surface next year. So I'm putting FAA in that group who can challenge Djokovic. Obviously, we got Nadal there because he's probably going to win the French, but we'll see how he responds, because he's obviously on he was on a 4-match winning streak, and then he beat Ruud. So Nadal's right there for sure. And I would say Holger Rune, put him in that group. And then, because he beat Djokovic in the Paris Masters final, which is incredibly impressive. And throw in Alexander Zverev once he gets back to full health. That's a nasty injury. Can't believe that happened to him at Roland Garros, but that's how it goes. So those are the guys, in my opinion, who can challenge Djokovic for that number one spot next year. To me, heading out of 2022, Carlos is the year on number one. It's been the year of Carlos Alcaraz, basically, because of how quickly and how impressively he stormed the tennis establishment and just took over. But you leave 2022 still really believing, I think we all know it, that Djokovic is the best player in the world, and he's going to try and take back that number one ranking at the Australian Open 2023, win his 10th Australian Open. And if he does that, it's pretty hard to argue that he is the best player. So Alcaraz is going to try and have a lot to say about that, and so are about 6 or 7 or 8 of those other guys that I mentioned as well. So lots to look forward to. I guess this is the end of our ATP or WTA reporting on the slice in 2022. We've got Davis Cup for Canada starting. The Davis Cup in general final starts this week, and I'll be virtually in the press conferences and stuff like that, reporting on that for you. But thank you guys so much for being here. Thanks for always watching, get around our stuff. If you want to just stay tuned to our news and content, make sure you follow me on Twitter. Make sure you hit our website, bookmark it, and check out all the links below, and bet stamp included in that. So thanks for being here. We'll see what 2023 brings us with Djokovic trying to take over the top of the hill again. What do you think is going to happen?